Good morning and welcome to the Masters of Supply Chain Weekly Digest. I am super fortunate this morning to be joined by my good friend Arun Kumar. So Arun has got a massive history in supply chain. He was head of global manufacturing and technology for Johnson & Johnson. He then moved on to Honeywell in the aerospace division, where he was the global chief digital and information officer. And he's been sitting as a board member on the Supply Chain Analytics Institute since 2021. Arun, thank you so much for joining me this morning. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, David. My pleasure. I'm glad to be here. And definitely, I heard a lot of podcasts of yours as well. You really bring relevant topics, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, we try to, Arun. I'm not sure that we're always that relevant and maybe a little bit opinionated, but we try. So, look, I want to start off with you posted a great article in the last week to LinkedIn, and the article was entitled "Org Silos to Agentic Silos: A Call to Action for Digital Leaders." And I read the article and was just fascinated because as we're watching technology evolve and as we're watching supply chain technology evolve, we're very quick to just do things in the same way. And I didn't think about the fact that as we're starting to build more of these agents into our technologies, and as we're starting to do something different, that we might actually be replicating an age-old problem of data silos within the supply chain. So when I read your article, I was like, oh, I should have thought of this earlier. I need to talk to Arun. So that's where I wanted to start this morning and just get your thoughts on why did you write the article? What were you thinking? Where do you think this is going?
So I was kind of getting bombarded by agents, right? Everywhere you look, like maybe we all should have like James Bond agent style and then came here, right? But there is definitely, if you look at how the evolution is happening with AI, with the large language models, it actually changed the whole adoption of AI into a different level. And then the next maturity is the agent maturity, where you are actually touching the workflows and getting actions done. So it's a fantastic concept, but it is coming fast and furious. Right? You look at every announcement. I don't want to give the names. Like you talk a ERP vendor, they have agent. You talk a CRMA person, they have agent. You talk a PLM, they have an agent. Every company is trying to do something with the agents, not just because it is the cute thing to do, but there is value in it. But as we do that, if we don't think about it in a mature way and then really think about what it means in the long run, then I'm really scared that we are going to end up creating another complex things that we have created already, especially the digital and IT leaders, right? We said data, and we created a lot of this data. Now we have like the data swamps, right? At least data was better because it is just like sitting there. It was not doing anything, right? But now agents, they're going to act. Now suddenly you have like this, I mean, it's kind of like a nightmare at the same time, like a good thing as well. So that's when I said like it might be a right time and a wake up call for us to really think about how do we manage this, because this is coming. There is no way we are going to say it's not coming.
And this is part of the challenge, because there's a rush to innovate. And there's a sense of urgency in terms of agentic AI. We need to embed it. We need to make it part of our technology stack. And everybody's in that rush to get that to market. But what you're really saying is you need to be more thoughtful. Don't just pick the low-hanging fruit. Don't just implement technology for the sake of technology. Having a lot of shiny objects may not actually solve your problem, and in fact, in the longer term, may cause an even deeper problem. Am I getting that right?
And may cause a deeper problem, and it will happen very fast because these agents are coming too fast, right? This is no longer like a 3-year roadmap that you're going to have, right? You can deploy an agent within like 3 months. Within 6 months, you can get it up and running. But just think about the agent proliferation and just look at like the supply chain, right? Like just where the supply chain had, right? You can have like a planner agents, procurement agents, manufacturing agents, process engineering agents. Yes, all of this is great. But if you start creating them in silos and they start making decisions on their own, which is even more complicated because there is no governance layer. When humans are in the loop, you have a governance layer to an extent. Yes, it is slow, but now the agent proliferation will cause a lot more complexity in the organization, and you will not be able to rewind from it, right? So it might be actually detrimental.
So question. So why wouldn't you then deploy an agent as a governance agent? So an agent of the agents.
Absolutely fantastic concept. That's what you need to kind of like think about. Like what is that governance? Either there is a super agent that is orchestrating all of it, right? Or there is an architecture that you can use to make sure that there is a good governance across these agents. But ultimately, it has to be tied to a business problem that you are trying to solve, right? So if you are saying, hey, I'm going to use a planner agent and I'm going to focus on planner productivity, okay, fantastic. I'm going to do procurement agent to do drive negotiations better, great. But if you take a step back and say, I really need this super agent to really make my supply chain flow smoothly, then you have a different discussion, right? So if you start thinking about it from the beginning, not that you need to create that super agent from the beginning. Going back to your point, I love the point that you made, right? Like, can we create this super agent at least architecturally, logically, and then as you build these small things, because you still need proof points, but
Right.
make them as part of that architecture, then you are going to drive to the overall vision, and then like the long-term sustainability of this agent framework.
Right. But I mean, this isn't the interesting point for me, Arun, is that this isn't a new supply chain problem. So, one of the inherent difficulties in our industry is that we tend to optimize in very microscopic areas. And so, I had an interesting conversation with a company recently who had deployed one of the latest, sort of robotic pick, pack, and ship solutions, and they put this into a distribution center. It was phenomenal. Their pick rate was, increased by 400%, but they couldn't figure out why they were still shipping at the same pace. And it was because while they were able to pick a lot faster, they hadn't figured out that they also needed to then be able to assemble the pallets at the same pace and then be able to move those pallets onto the truck at the same pace. And so it was a classic example of we optimized based on one set of criteria and we forgot the upstream and the downstream processes. And that's why it relates to me in terms of, well, of course, and if we have agentic AI embedded in planning, but it's making decisions without understanding ERP or without understanding, the manufacturing process, then it may be optimizing based on everything that it knows, but it has to understand the context with which it operates.
You hit it on the head, and then our gold rat never dies. The goal, that goal book comes into play every time, right? Like really looking at the theory of constraints. And sometimes we are, and the good thing about supply chain is there is a foundational knowledge about value stream mapping. There is a foundational knowledge about lean thinking, right? So, and then the Six Sigma aspects that are all there in the supply chain organizations. And we need to bring that out, right? We need to make sure that those things are not going away as we go into these digital tools, right? That's why I think it is important to actually, first of all, figure out why you are doing it, right? Are you driving planner productivity, or are you driving overall supply chain throughput? In your case, right? Am I just doing like a pick pack efficiency, or at the end of the day, am I making sure that my throughput is going without causing a lot more inventory, right? So you need to figure out that purpose, but then you need to get into what is the process flow, where is this agent coming into the process flow, even if you are rethinking the whole process, right? What is that process flow? And then of course the good old data is also there, right? The the data quality is extremely important, and once you have nailed that down, then you can drive these things in whatever POC format you want and then drive it.
And we do talk a lot about the ability, like what is true innovation? Innovation tends to be scripted as doing old things in new ways. And my belief is that true innovation is actually doing new things in new ways. And we have to be very careful, especially with the buzz around AI, that we're not just simply using it as some sort of an automation tool, because it's very different. You really you authenticate the activity, then you authenticate the process, and now with agentic AI, we're able to actually then, if you like, digitize the decision making, and that is when we start to get really creative. However, we are still caught up within our own constraints, and we have to be careful on that. And I love your reference to Goldratt and the the theory of constraints. It is, you know supply chain is still supply chain, and we have to, we can't just throw all of that out because we've got a shiny new tool that we think will solve all of our problems. I firmly believe, Arun, that it will solve a lot of our problems, but we have to be thoughtful in its implementation, and we have to be very cognizant of the fact that, that old adage, bad data in is bad data out. And so thinking through the problem statement, I think, is going to be very, very important.
Yeah, reimagining the supply chain with AI agents is definitely not like good old thing of saying, okay, here is my continuous improvement, right? You can actually rethink the whole process, right? If you are saying, hey, I'm going to have a planner agent in place, do I do the SI and OP in the same way, or am I going to do it totally differently, right? So definitely you have to reimagine how this new world is going to be, but you need to go back to the fundamentals. At the end of the day, supply chain is about the flow of material, flow of information, and flow of dollars, and we just need to make sure that we use those fundamentals and build on top of that, right? So one of the good practices that I have seen where we got the value is not to just jump into the individual AI agent, but really take a step back and then define very clearly, hey, we have a throughput issue on this particular assembly. Now let's solve that throughput issue on the assembly, and then really flow of material, flow of information, and flow of dollars from tier 2 to tier 3. And then, yes, that took like 3 months, but after that, then you can go and then say, where is my low-hanging fruit? And then let me just deploy it. And that was a huge success, right? On the flip side, where we started, okay, here is my contract negotiation AA agent. So we started that AA agent. But that contract negotiation was not talking to the pricing, was not talking to the supplier availability. And then that actually, yes, it improved the productivity of the contracting office, but it really did not create the value. So there is this need to step back, think end to end, and then drive your local POCs or even like bigger implementations.
And so I think that, there's something in this which is around go slow to go fast. So I think that, being a little bit more methodical and understanding the true business problem and working your way through it is good. However, I always like to throw a note of caution in here, which is that doesn't mean that you go actually slow.
Yes.
Because this technology it's fully democratized. It's easy to pick up. It's a low barrier of entry to be able to actually leverage it. And so it's important for companies not to pause too long in trying to make everything perfect. The beautiful part about agentic AI is it's very adaptable. It's very easy to change. And so there's something in my head here, which is, um, it's okay to deploy and then amend as you go along. That
Absolutely.
is better than spending too much time trying to perfect the solution up front. It's again, it's the done is better than perfect. And especially for supply chain, we don't have time. We don't have time to have those perfect installations every single time. But understanding the true power of agentic AI and understanding the art of the possible in its deployment will actually should enable more agility.
Yes.
And in your supply chain thinking, I think bringing that agility in and understanding that once you deploy an agent, it doesn't necessarily mean it's cast in stone. It means that you've started and then you have the ability to amend that over time while you perfect the solution. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would just like add a small thing, right? Rather to your point, rather than thinking go slow before go fast, this is more about think a little bit more before you act. I would phrase it in that way, right? But then the good thing about agents is they are learning. They're actually not just sitting idle like an automation. See, people sometimes confuse the automation bot world with the agentic AI world. Automation bot world was rules implemented and then they were etched in stone kind of a thing, right? Whereas agentic AI, the best thing is they are learning. So, for example, and I go back to that previous example I mentioned, when we implemented something for that particular planning piece, we did not have to implement for all the use cases. We figured out like 3 exceptions that the planner is working on, and then we actually implemented that. And in the back end, it is learning. It is oh, this kind of exception this person is doing in this way, so it's actually learning in the back end. So adaptability becomes very fast as well, as long as you're monitoring and then making sure that you have the controls in place. The beauty is you launch in 10% use cases, and then it will learn at least like next 50%. The last 40% is somewhere you just need to make sure that you go through some rigorous process, right? So that's how I would frame it.
Okay. No, I like that. And it is very much let's get away from the traditional supply chain ready, fire, aim approach and actually spend a little bit more time thinking through it. But that shouldn't slow us down. And also knowing that this is a learning process, and that the beautiful thing about this technology is it understands and it interprets and it starts to learn. So Arun, um, if you're talking to a CIO today who really wants to drive agentic AI adoption into their stack, what are the top three things? What are the three lessons that you would tell that CIO to say, this is how you should approach?
Yeah, the first thing, definitely understand why you are doing it. The purpose, right? Making sure that your business understands the purpose, where the value is coming up, why you are doing it. That is foundational. The second thing would be the process, data, and architecture. I'm kind of lumping it together. It is not just data anymore. It is the process as well. That having that robust process, ensuring that there is a right data quality, and you have an architecture that lets multiple agents talk. We are going to end up in a multi-agent environment. So how do you get a step ahead of having those protocols in place, so that like model context protocol that is coming up, how do you set it up, right? So that would be the second one. The third one is really the people side of it. The organization need to think agility, right? Need to make sure that people are comfortable with 10% use cases, 40% learning, and then rest of that is going to be deployed. Not only the business and your teams as well, right? Your teams also need to figure out how to move fast, right? It cannot be like a let down, sit down and write all the requirements and then we will figure it out. It is not going to happen. You need to deploy, learn from it, let it learn and teach you what it is learning, and go from there. I would say those three things, David. What do you think? Like, I'm sure like you have seen all this music play in a different way now.
I think I think your 3 points are absolutely valid. I think that one of the challenges is always to clearly define the business problem and make sure that you understand, to your earlier point, the flow of dollars. I think that sometimes we forget in supply chain that inventory is cash, and managing that flow of cash is really important to every business and every company. I think it's also very worthwhile for people to be a little bit inquisitive. I think that organizations need to step away a little bit from the hype and start to be more curious about what they might be able to achieve. I think that there's too many occasions whereby we are so held back because of the way that we've always done things. We're almost afraid to change. And I think that having that curiosity and being willing to push the boundaries is going to be one of the key elements of actually changing the nature of supply chain going forward. And this technology is perfect for doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And then taking that risk and then not being, don't sit idle and then create that idle thing slow you down, right? So do something. And really the good thing about the agentic AI is it is learning as well in the back end, and just do it, but think before doing.
I love that. Procrastination kills innovation, as they say.
Yes, absolutely.
Arun, thank you so much for joining me this morning. We could talk for days on this topic. We will invite you back, because this technology and this opportunity is going to continue to really shift supply chain for everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. And thank you all for listening. If you like our content, please subscribe. Please give us a thumbs up. This has been the Weekly News Digest from Masters of Supply Chain. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much.